All right, welcome everyone. We're here with Michael O'Neill, and Michael is the host of the Solopreneur Hour podcast. He's also, for our audience, created, I know, one online course in social media marketing ninja tactics, and he's also got the Solo Lab, which is a coaching program for solopreneurs. Is that how you sort of swing it?
I would, yeah. That's exactly what I would say.
Great, excellent. And amazingly successful with his podcast. Solopreneur Hour has 6 million downloads and it's very well monetized, which is great in the solopreneur space. It's always good if we're monetizing things. And then some of the cool stuff I saw, you're drummer, race car driver, or car racer, competitive racquetball player, yeah. Former expert mountain bike racer. There's a guy on our team who would love that. He's big into that. You've got your dog, and you're practicing what you preach, which is I love. You're out there building your non-dollars per hour solopreneur business, and then showing everyone else how to do that. So that's amazing, and all the stuff I've seen and read about you, I'm pretty excited to be chatting with you here today, Michael.
Well, thanks for having me on, man. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I'm psyched.
Thanks, me too.
I'm psyched.
So I'm curious, you get to talk to a lot of pretty awesome people. I've checked out your show, and some of the guest list is amazing, just over the 2 years that you've been doing it. Do you have any, and I'm sure you hear all sorts of amazing jobs per se for these solopreneurs. Do you have any favorites of, over the years, or that just stick out to you as like, these guys are doing some amazing things? I'm sure you see amazing stuff all the time, but what are your kind of top faves there for the cool things people are doing?
Let's see. So what's cool about this era of time right now is that you can literally make a business out of almost anything you can think of. Like, it's really cool. I just had a guy on the other day named Steve Sims, and he was a former door guy, like a bouncer at a club. And then started doing, like, because he's sort of literally the gatekeeper between the club and, the cool people getting in, not getting in, that kind of thing. He started hosting his own parties, and this was like in Hong Kong or something years ago. And as these parties grew more popular, people started asking him to do, hey, can you introduce me to blankety blank, whatever. And he started doing that. So fast forward 20 years, and he has a company called the Bluefish. And the Bluefish is the world's '1 executive concierge service. So literally, if you want to go to space, he can make that happen. If you want to, he's sent people to space. He sent people to like 2 or 3 people into the Titanic.
Wow. Like
underwater. He's had people at the, like in Florence, someone said, I really want to have a memorable, dinner in Florence. What should we do? He put together a 6 top, so 6 people having dinner at the base of the Statue of David, which they don't let people do at all, with Andreas Bocelli, who's like one of the most famous opera singers in the world, singing to these 6 people. Like, so he's had a guy that was like a Journey, the band Journey fan, put him on stage singing 4 songs with him. Like, he can quite literally almost make anything you can imagine happen, and that to me was pretty awesome. Wow.
Yeah, he's the ultimate doorman now, except making his own thing out of it.
Yeah, like we did the show, on a Monday, and then on Tuesday he was like, "Hey man, what are you doing on Wednesday?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm going to be here. I got my solo lab, like you talked about. I have that Wednesday nights. I have a Google Hangout." He goes, "Want to go to the People's Choice Awards?" I was like, "Yes, I do. In fact, I want to do that. I'm in San Diego, but he's in LA." Yeah. So I, rearranged my solo lab, and I went to LA and put a suit on and went to the People's Choice Awards. And then while we were there, he was like, "Yeah, we're hosting Elton John's Oscar party," which is quite literally the most famous of the Oscar parties. It's like that one, and there's one other one that's like a really big deal. He goes, "Hey, you want to go?" I'm like, "Yes, I do want to go to that." In fact, just in case Jennifer Lawrence needs a date, So to me, that was pretty cool. I mean, and that happened because he was a door guy. Yeah. Well, and he was a door guy with initiative and a creative mindset. And so that to me was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. Sounds like a good guy to know. And I think that's definitely a good point there on the initiative side, right? Because you can put yourself in any situation as long as you have that initiative and drive and persistence to go out there and do something, you can really turn it into a business.
You can. And I think one of the biggest challenges we have as we're trying to leave these careers that are stable, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Is feeling like we don't know enough to build some kind of business. So I'm in the process right now of writing this book, and it's called Unemployable, because that's kind of my keyword for this whole thing, is because I knew I was unemployable many years ago.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to someone like that, when you kind of start realizing that, wait a second, maybe this traditional life is not cut out, I'm not cut out for this traditional life. What do I do? And one of the first things I suggest is to take inventory of your skill sets. And I don't think people go deep enough on those. So like I wrote this thing out the other day. You literally list everything. You write something, get a piece of paper, write stuff I know how to do at the top of the piece of paper, and then just start writing anything you know how to do. Excel spreadsheets master, parent of toddlers, autocross race car driver, amateur PHP programmer, CSS skills, handyman, video gamer, snowboarder, target shooter, bartender, fashionista, blogger, mountain biker, whatever, literally whatever you know how to do, write it down.
Yeah.
And you're going to end up with a piece of paper that has a lot of stuff on it. You may not know, new teeth. This is like my 7th show today. I apologize. But you may not know how those pieces all fit together.
Yeah.
But you're looking down at your assets and going, okay, maybe there's something I can do with this. And then part B to that is that as we age, we start pulling away the things that we used to love. Like you told me before we started chatting, you grew up playing hockey. Do you still play hockey?
No.
Do you miss it? Do you miss it?
Yeah, sometimes I do. I've picked up a few other sports. I get to go kiteboarding now, so I'm pretty stoked on that. But
yeah.
But
there's something about looking back on the 12-year-old you or the 15-year-old you, the you right before you had kids, and going, where did that person go? What, that person didn't know anything about monetizing or optimizing your traffic. They just did stuff that they wanted to do, and they didn't do stuff they didn't want to do. Yeah. How do I get back to that person? What do I do? So if you used to build model airplanes when you were a kid, go build a model airplane today. Just go get one and build it, and you're going to see how you feel and how it's going to remind you of that great feeling. And I'll tell you what, man, it'll start resetting your stress levels, because those are the things that we tune out as we age and we get more, parental responsibility, if you will.
Yep. No, that's amazing advice. Funny, I just had an opportunity to do that. So for me, one of the things I wouldn't say I gave it up, but I've noticed it slipping, as I used to do a lot of kiteboarding, and I kind of took a break from that. Well, got married, had a baby, business is growing fast, so I haven't been in a while. I took my first vacation in a couple of years, just a couple of weeks ago, got to Mexico and went kiteboarding, and yeah, there was definitely some reminiscing of like, this feels great, this is amazing. And then of course I come back and
back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it brings you back to like, oh yeah, this is who I used to be when I had creative ideas and I really enjoyed, XYZ. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and I came back from that just super pumped and energized to get back into business. So it was definitely good. I like that.
Yeah, it's the move. Even if you just have to check in with yourself and kind of, go through the process, it's hugely helpful.
So another thing I was really curious to ask you about, given the number of people that you get to talk to about their businesses, is growth and marketing. And I know you've taught courses or you teach people about that, and you've taught that about in network marketing and social media. But I'm wondering if you've seen, in these different people that you talk to, tactics, strategies, things that you'd recommend for people, or ideas that have worked really well on the growth side, or even advice you'd give generally on the growth side. Because to me, the ideas are great, and it's awesome to sort of have passion projects and things that you can work on. But if you can't find people who are going to take it, or are going to use it, or buy it, or subscribe to it, or something like that, then it's very difficult, obviously, to keep doing it. So growth and marketing, obviously, a huge part of anything that you're doing. Wondering what tips or ideas you've seen, or things. I mean, you've obviously had amazing growth with your podcast. Is there things that you've seen that are big wins?
Yeah, so I feel like that's two questions. One is about, the tip of, I think the whole, the whole kit and caboodle is tipping in terms of what you're going to do if you've ever done it before. I'm going to try rephrasing that whole entire thing, but I think a lot of people start projects because they're just trying to monetize something. And they go, oh, Periscope is popular or Snapchat's popular. I'm going to create a course. But they've never actually done anything in that, in that realm, in that expertise. So they're just sort of putting a course out and becoming an expert, and they're not really an expert. So long prior to me creating that course, I went to 17 different cities and spoke live and did live trainings for literally thousands of people on how to grow your network marketing business with social media. So by the time I finished with that, I could create a course exactly like the stuff we did live and know all the most common questions and give them exactly what they needed. So I knew that it was an audience that needed what I had, and I knew exactly what to speak to them. So I think going through the process of being a consultant first, meaning you're working one-on-one with someone, you're helping them with whatever the thing is, you get enough of those under your belt, and you're going to have a really good idea of what you can offer and what they need. So my adage is, if you have more time than money, you have time to go and help these people out individually. If you have more money than time, then you can scale. It's time to scale. Yep. So, and that's really, once your schedule gets full, then you can go, okay, I can scale this now. Then you can start thinking about doing a course. So that's the one side. The second thing is that with Solo Lab, and I think with a lot of membership sites or new products, you can do most of the heavy lifting and test without ever having to spend a dime on it. I think I just mentioned, I'm writing this book right now, and I'm going through the process that I've done literally probably a dozen times now. You see these t-shirts behind me. Those shirts I've created because I've created many, many shirts in my day. I'm a member of this small community of a bunch of nerds that like to play with old German cars. And so I knew that community really well because I was on, the message board, and I knew what they wanted. I knew what the cool stuff was. I knew where the people were. So when I needed money to sort of bolster my restoration that I was doing, I said, all right, if I'm listening to, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, how can I take my hobby and turn it into a business? So I said, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to design a couple of shirts. So I designed a couple of shirts in, Photoshop and Illustrator, and I made little mock-ups of them, and I posted it on a message board and said, hey guys, are you interested in this shirt? And a bunch of them said yes. I said, great, here's the landing page, and here's where you can buy it. So 75 people bought the shirt, which was enough for me to go, all right, this is a valid idea. I then had about $2,000 that I could use to finance the actual shirt production. And then I made 100 shirts each. And so I had another 125 shirts to sell. I made, another $4,000 on that, but I didn't have to spend a dime of my own money. It was like I tested it out in the world. So I kind of did the same thing with the social media course, which was, I had already gone to 20 cities and figured out that these people really needed this thing. All right, well, let me invest 3 months and I'm going to do some videos and I'll put a website up and see. And I did, I remember thinking, I want to do 50 sales in a month. That was my goal. If I get 50, it was about $100. So I said, if I can make it $5,000 within a month, I would be so psyched. And I remember I did this December, I think 2010 or something it was. And I had 100 sales in the first hour. So I had like 10,000. I'd never had $10,000 before. And I was like, and that was because I tapped into this market. I did enough sort of pre-sale, and people knew it existed. They couldn't wait to jump on and nail it.
And was that before your podcast?
Oh yeah, the podcast started long after that. Podcast started in 2013.
Right.
Yeah, so it was 3 years later. I didn't have a glimmer in my podcast eye at all. Or a podcast. I'm telling you, I'm sorry, it's been a long day. But yeah, it was so far before, and I had no idea what I was going to do at all. I just knew that I think I knew this cycle of being able to test something without being able to articulate what it was. I can articulate it now. I can write it down and go, yeah, here's the process. Right. Be a consultant, get it till you're busy, then scale it into an online thing, and you've got literally almost a 100% assuredness that it's going to work, but if you just sort of launch and think that you know the audience and think you know what they want, it's going to be a tough road to hoe, I think.
Yeah, no, that's awesome advice. In fact, it's very similar to the way I launched my first course about 10 years ago now. I'd been teaching in the classroom for a couple of years and saw the opportunity, saw that people needed it, started a little online blog, and then launched the course from there. So I got to launch to fanfare, not quite to the extent of 100 sales and 10 grand in the first hour. We were a little further along before we hit milestones like that, but that's pretty amazing. And that was really your first big online product, was the course that you did?
Yeah, and I didn't launch it well at all. I didn't do any of the tried and true practices. It was very hacky.
Was it mostly just your list that you developed from your consulting and traveling and doing?
I didn't have a list. It was literally I had an element of recognition because at least with this particular company, everybody knew me. So, right. And there was a lot of trust there because I was on stage speaking at the event. So I literally just had to use Facebook. I posted a couple things on Facebook and that's what it did. That's when you could actually post on Facebook and people would see your post.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Before you had to pay for it.
Different era.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And now I would do it differently, and I'm sure it would be bigger.
Yeah.
If it could, but I don't regret it. It was good. It was good reps. It was good repetitions.
Yeah, definitely. So if you were to do it now, would you still do the kind of consulting, verifying in the real world, building up? I mean, do you have the time to do that though?
Well, typically when you're creating something like that, you have more time than money.
Yeah, I guess if you're restarting and doing something new,
it's different. It's different when you have some celebrity or some clout. I was watching this guy on Instagram who just posted a couple of things and he just blew up. It was like a quick $250,000 deal, but he has 1.2 million on Instagram. It's like, yeah, well, of course. No, he doesn't have to go do one-on-one consulting. But if you're just getting started and you want to kind of get your chops up a little bit, you have to do that. There's no way around that. You got to knock on doors and get business and learn from your people. And then once you get that down, you go, okay, all right, now I know the best practices. And I think that that's the easiest way to launch something well. The hardest way is just to go, oh, this worked for this one person, I'm going to do it just like they did.
Yeah.
And I see that with podcasts all the time, is people literally cloning, different shows. And then they're totally surprised that they failed. And you go, well, of course you did.
Well, you haven't listened to the Alone Entrepreneur yet?
Right, exactly. Right. With your Thunderbolt round at the end. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, dude, you missed the point of this whole thing.
Nice. I think I remember seeing it. It's interesting. You mentioned Facebook back when it worked, or people would see the post that way. And now, you see things like Instagram working really well. And I remember, I think I was watching Gary Vee recently talking about how he originally started buying the keyword wine on AdWords for 5 cents. And no one else was bidding against him. And I know when I first got into AdWords, which was, pretty early on in the AdWords days, it was super easy to do well with it, and now it's a lot tougher. Do you think looking at podcasts, they seem like it's been taking off even more and more so just this last year, both from people producing them for various different reasons, monetizing or marketing other products, and then people being guests on them. Do you see, like, where in the growth cycle do you think the podcast is? Is it still taking off? Is it got a long way to go? Do you think there'll be any kind of sunset for it? And would you say to someone who's interested? I've had a bunch of people tell me, Greg, you've got to do a consistent podcast for any business that you're starting now. You got to get out there and start a podcast. It should be just like email marketing. It should be a basic part of your business. Is that something you'd suggest for any business out there marketing their products, or anybody getting on as guests on podcasts?
The short answer is no. Next question. No. No, I don't. Well, you asked a few questions there. So
sorry, it was pretty convoluted. There was a lot there.
The first is, I think podcasting is still on the uprise. I think, a couple years ago, maybe 1 out of 10 people knew what it was, and probably 3 out of 10 people know what one is now. In terms of building a platform out of it, I sort of like that idea still. But I think people get into podcasting for the wrong reason, which is almost specifically what you just stated, which is like it needs to be part of your online initiative and your, your funnel building and that kind of thing. And I don't buy into that too much. I'll tell you why. I think that ultimately, remember, podcasting is just another form of media. If television shows, just every single show, if it was like 10 ways for you to go blankety blankety blank, you get pretty bored at that show pretty quickly. Or if that show asks the same 6 questions or whatever, you'd go, okay, you'd see it and go, oh yeah, this is good. But then after, you've the 30th version, you go, all right, I've seen this movie. I'm good. Like, I'm moving on. Ultimately, entertainment trumps, knowledgeable content. People just want to be entertained for an hour. And if you happen to be able to slip in some great knowledge on them, you've done your job. The problem is, I think most podcasters don't have the chops to be entertaining as well as informative. They can be informative and they can research someone, but it's harder to survive, which is why I think you see a lot of these shows that are very sort of strictly informative. They have a little bubble and then they go away. New and noteworthy and podcasts in general used to be way more dense about a year ago. So I think that slowed down a bit. And I think something that I'd mentioned a couple years ago, I said, hey guys, the pros are coming. FYI, the real broadcast pros, people who went to school for this stuff, they're coming to podcasting. Be prepared. Don't have a show with crappy sound quality. Don't lead a show with someone's name. Like, learn how to intro a guest, learn how to be a host and like mention their, how to reach that person before the very last thing on the show. Like, you'd never see that in traditional media. You'd never see, someone go on Jimmy Fallon that just wrote a book and Jimmy Fallon wait till the closing credits to mention where they could get the book. But people do it on podcasts all the time. They're like, well, I want to thank you for this show. How can people get in touch with you? And you're like, dude, first of all, that's your job specifically because you are the host of the show. But you're not doing hosting duties. If you're telling me, it's like telling someone when they get to your house, yeah, just go find the drinks. You go do it. No, you pour them a drink because you're the host. That's how it works. So no, you would hear someone on Jimmy Fallon say, hey, blah, blah, you can find the book on Amazon, like right away they do it. And they'll probably plug it 5 times during the course of the show. And that's what it takes to actually be a professional broadcaster. And I think a lot of the current crop of podcasters don't pay any attention to that. They just worry about like, how can I convert these people onto my mailing list? And that's a bummer.
Yeah, I feel like I've got a great lesson there. I think I started, let's see, what did I do wrong so far? I've introduced you by your name, and I tend to be more, my background comes from kind of teaching and as a former lawyer, so I think I tend to be more informational rather than entertaining. So
sorry, I didn't mean to bust your balls there.
No, it's totally fine. I can definitely take it. It's it's honestly, it's great advice for anyone who's getting into that space.
Well, I mean, look, it's Pat Flynn and I talked about this last year, which is there's an art to being like, it's so easy now to pick up a phone and record something with it and be on video and be on Periscope or whatever. But and it's fine to do that. And then in 6 months from now, when when ABC decides to start a Periscope account, you go, oh, that's what it looks like when a professional does it. It's very different than what we're doing. So I think if we can sort of bridge the gap somehow, then we can take this thing, at least in my world, I make my living podcasting essentially. So I want people to be better at it so that it brings more people to podcasting and they stick around. And then when there's more people around, then advertisers come around. And then, then there's more, possibility of everybody making a career out of, believe it or not, just having like this microphone and doing a show from their spare bedroom in my case. So I want everybody to win. I don't want them to hear a show and go, oh, this is what podcasting is? I'm out. Right?
Yeah, especially if it's that first show shared with you by a buddy.
Yeah, or whatever. I mean, think about the person on the other end where they're listening to NPR or to Howard Stern or morning radio, whatever it is, and they flip over to your janky sounding show, that and you don't know how to hold a conversation or, you know, carry on an interview, and they're going to go, oh man. And then they go right back to the pro again. That's the difference.
Yep.
So, you know, for me, I really treat it as a serious, you know, a business. And it's funny because when I'm on the show, I don't. And that's I don't edit. I mean, I hit record and I hit stop, and anything that happens in between is what the show is.
Yeah.
And I've literally, in 375 shows, I think I've had like one major edit. And that was something that a guest said, hey, you mind? I need to not have that in there. I'm like, all right. but generally I wouldn't do that. And then once when we cracked up so hard that I had to, I was probably 3 minutes of laughing.
Oh, wow.
I was like, all right, there's too much dead air on the show. Yeah, it was pretty funny. But so I take it seriously. And I think that a lot of people who get into podcasting do it because they want to, you know, I want to monetize, I want to do this and that. And really, I feel like you need to get into podcasting because you love the subject you're talking about. And if you do, then when you have a guest on, you're going to have really amazing insight and have really interesting conversations. You're also going to know exactly what your audience wants to hear so that you can demonstrate to them why they might want to buy something that you have because you understand them so well, you know? I was listening to Chris Harris, the Joe Rogan show. There's a guy named Chris Harris who has a YouTube channel called Chris Harris on Cars. And he's a British guy and he's great. He's a phenomenal driver, but he's a great, entertaining host of his YouTube channel. You're just really fascinated by what he says. And he was talking to Joe Rogan. He said, yeah, you know, I rotate in my interest between cars, watches, and hi-fi. Cars, watches, and hi-fi. So it's like he's into, obviously, all kinds of cars. He loves vintage Porsches and stuff. He loves vintage watches and like that whole community. And he loves like audiophile stereo stuff. And I listened to him say it. I go, I'm into the exact same three things. I want to start a show called Cars, Watches, and Hi-Fi. So I bought the domain name. I did. And I was like, I will start that show. And I guarantee you, because I'm so passionate about all three of those things, that I could monetize that show to 6 figures in 6 months, unquestionably. Because
cars, watches, and hi-fi. Well, they're monetizable things for sure.
Oh my God, totally. Like sponsored by Rolex, you know? I mean, done deal.
Perfectly niche too,
So,
right? You're gonna
yes.
Anyone who's listening to that is gonna be like, this is exactly what I'm into.
And so in terms of online business, we have to have those same things, which is, you know, an audience that's hungry for what we know. We have to have a good niche, and they need to be able to trust that, you know, that they can trust what you're saying because you're into it. Like they see that you're into it and you can speak their language. You know, I can speak the language of your people. And once that exists, which is a great, you know, a podcast is a great channel to do all of that. Then I think you can monetize it. But man, you cannot go into it thinking, oh, I can totally monetize this show, because it's going to fail.
Great. Thanks for that's it's good advice looking at the podcast side of things. And taking some of your advice, I know we've mentioned it a few times, but I do think it's something that I will mention again, because I do think it's something that our whole audience could be very interested in, or is interested in, is the whole solopreneur side of things. And so if they do want to check you out, they can find you at solopreneurhour.com. That's the best place to get started.
But no one can spell preneur.
Oh, right.
So I've shortened it to solohour.com because it's very difficult to spell, you know, a French word in America. Maybe not for you guys. You have a whole French province, but
we do.
But,
yeah.
Yeah, but we have a very hard time with that NEUR thing.
Yep, gotcha. Yeah, we get the same thing sometimes with Thinkific, our company.
Yes. Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, solohour.com everywhere on all the social medias and everything.
Awesome. So solohour.com. And I know a couple of the things that I've checked out there. You've got the course on social media marketing, ninja tactics for network marketing, which I think is awesome, because it's really, I'm surprised that you put that together that long ago, because it's something that is so relevant right now and continues to be. And then, of course, the Solo Lab. I know I have a good friend going through that right now, and he's loving it in terms of coaching for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. And I know that a ton of our audience they're constantly looking for more advice and help on growing their own solo businesses. So that's definitely something that you can check out. And then, of course, your podcast is awesome in terms of the advice and some of the guests that you get on there. So
thanks. Yeah, in terms of if anybody has an idea to do that, like a membership site. Do we have time for me to say this?
Oh, this is not the end. I'm not, we're not going to do the, and now we're done. How can we reach you? So I got one or two more questions for you.
Okay, cool. I'll tell you about the Solo Lab thing, which was when I started the show. Again, I had all I knew about when I started the show was I want to talk to some cool people that have done some cool things. And I wanted an excuse to talk to comedians because I like stand-up comedy a lot, and actors and online business people and authors and those kinds of things. And the word solopreneur to me always meant when you're trying to build a life, instead you're not trying to build a company, you're trying to build a life of time and financial freedom. Generally, that's what a solo. And the second definition is when you hire someone's business, but you're really getting them. That's a solopreneur. So that's how I define it for my purposes. But I started doing the show. People started listening. Then they started writing me like 2 months into it. And they said, "Hey, do you do any coaching?" And I didn't. I didn't do any of that. And I said, "Yeah, no, not really. Do monetization, nothing like that." After like email 50 of people that are like, "Hey, do you do any coaching?" I'm like, all right, maybe I need to think about doing some coaching because I didn't know this was a thing. So I started announcing it on the show. And I said, "Hey, I'm creating something called, whenever I'm working on a new skill, I call it being in the lab." That's how I do it. So I just combine that into Solo Lab. And so I put out on the show, I made a little landing page and said, "Hey, if anybody's interested in joining Solo Lab, I'm going to schedule a little 15-minute session with you to see if it's a good fit for both of us." So I did these little 15-minute, I did 3 sets of these 15-minute interview days, which was about 40, I think I had about 40 people. And I had an idea of what I was going to do with Solo Lab going into it. And by the time I finished with those 40 people, little 15-minute interviews, "Hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Where are you from?" And then at the end of it, I would say, "Hey, are you a definite yes, a definite no, or a definite maybe?"
That's interesting. I've seen that recently before. That's a good approach. It's a great approach. I've seen it, and I'm trying to think of. I think one of the guys at Miracy was Danny Innie is using that approach too. It's an interesting one.
Well, and again, if you can test without investing anything, test before you invest. Now I feel like what's his face, but
but it gives you a clear answer too, right? There's no messing around. There's no if there may be, there may be. You can follow up on that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so so I said, okay, cool. And I got about, probably out of the 40, I think I got about 17 yeses. Maybe actually I got about 22 yeses. And so I said, all right, I'm gonna make a landing page work. It's gonna be active, and if I get at least 10 people, then we're gonna be good to go. It was $500 for a quarter, and I said okay. And so I put it out, and I got 13 people, I think, that actually plunked their credit card down and they joined Solo Lab in that first day. So my goal was 10. I got 13. Great. By the end of the week, I had 17 or something, and before I knew it, I had like 80. It's a
great conversion rate from 40 first interviews.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. 20, a little more than 25%. But it's maxed. It's been at its highest around the 80-person mark. At its lowest, it's been, I don't know, 40 or 50 or something like that.
Yep.
I feel like that's my sweet spot, is somewhere around the 50 range, because then I have enough time to manage everybody.
Yeah, because you actually, I checked it out, and what you're offering is kind of amazing in terms of the personal time that you put into people there. It's not just it's not just on, like, you actually spend time with everyone, which is great.
Yeah, that's my tagline for the show, is it's a unique kind of mastermind. And my friends that are like coaches all think I'm crazy, because I do spend, they're getting me. They're getting one-on-one time a lot. So they get 2 30-minute coaching calls per quarter. We do a Google Hangout every Wednesday, and sometimes it takes hours, because I have every single person that's in Solo Lab gets to get on those Hangouts, and if they have a question about whatever that week is, it's like getting a coaching call. I will answer everybody's question. Sometimes they get 20 minutes at a time, that kind of thing. So, and then we have a private Facebook group that we, if you need to run stuff down day to day. And other than that, it's no frills. I don't send, coffee mugs out and t-shirts and stuff like that. That's what Solo Lab is. I modeled it after what I needed, and not what I was going to give people originally. I won't knock on your door and ask you why you haven't scheduled your call with me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to do that. And if you don't, then I can't I can't help you. You have to help yourself in this way.
Yeah.
Well,
especially when there's that value on the table, you want them to step up and take it. That's
right. That's, yeah, that's exactly right. And so some do and some don't, and that's okay. I was a little butthurt at the beginning when people, would leave and they wouldn't renew after, a couple of quarters or whatever. And then I thought, you know what, this is just people, at some point you need to go and fly and do your thing. And sometimes they just didn't have the goods, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
I couldn't take it personally.
But it does seem like a pretty amazing offering for people. It just, and I was shocked when I saw how much of your time you put out into that and put into it people personally who join it.
Hey man, I want sololab.com if anybody wants to check it out. That's my own plug for the day.
So you mentioned the lifestyle side of things, this solopreneur definition of building that life. And I love that because I actually talk about that a lot to people about why I got into online courses. I was practicing as a full-time corporate and securities lawyer, working with one of the biggest law firms in the country, did my own online course. And all of a sudden I had more time for family, friends, kiteboarding, all the fun stuff I like to do. So you got into this a while ago. Things are going well. What's the biggest thing for you, that the sort of living the dream thing that you take advantage of?
It's funny. I wasn't able to articulate that until about 3 weeks ago when I saw an Instagram post from a buddy of mine who looks like a Greek god with his shirt off. He's like the most chiseled, like we're all jealous.
Yeah.
And he was doing a shoot for some like fitness magazine or something. He's curling a couple of kettlebells, and he really is just like really ripped. And he had this great post. And at the end of the post, he said, sometimes I have to get up very early so I can go to the gym and I can do this thing. But that's something that, fulfills me and makes time, whatever. And he said this phrase, which is really sunk right in, which is, don't prioritize your schedule your priorities. And that resonated so hard with me. Don't prioritize your schedule your priorities.
Right.
So what I love to tinker and race my 47-year-old car, which is a vintage Porsche. I love to play racquetball a couple times a week.
Yeah.
I'm a drummer, so I'm a real drummer. It's not like a little hobby. I've been playing professionally since 1990.
Wow.
And it's home for me. And so I play gigs and I need time for that. I live in, San Diego, so there's always time to, go out and have some fun and enjoy. And so now those things are in my schedule. Like that's the first thing I do is block out time. I put my workout at the beginning of the day. I do a morning walk for like an hour and a half and get my 10,000 steps in. I have a regular racquetball schedule with different people on different days. It's in my schedule. I always find time to play the drums. And then I start thinking about work and how I can, do my work day. I never go the other way around. And so
that's great.
My hobbies are so important to me. And it's such a part of what I think is the ideal lifestyle. If you met me, you go, dude, you're not, I'm pretty rarely stressed at all about anything. If anything, I'm sweating from playing the drums or racquetball or something. And I'm leaving, I realize that I'm leaving quite literally probably $250,000 on the table per year. And that's okay. I don't mind that.
Yeah. Well, what would you do with it? Spend it on more cars that you couldn't tinker with because you didn't have the time, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. More watches or whatever it is.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, don't get into cars, watches, or hi-fi because they are all a bottomless pit.
I'll be on the lookout for that.
I'm telling you, man. I went through last year at this time. I think I bought 4 sets of speakers within 6 weeks. Just Craigslist, then Craigslist. Oh, there's the upgrade, a Craigslist. And then I took this picture. I had them all set up in my family room at one time, which is pretty funny. It looked like a rock concert. But yeah, so I really prioritize my hobbies and my lifestyle first, and then figure out how I get work will plug into it for sure.
That's a great way to do it. I think I unintentionally do that for a couple of things. I have a morning bike ride, and I'm always make sure I'm home for baby bath time these days. And then I've got some family stuff and a few sporting things. But
it's nice that you call your wife baby. That's really cool.
Yeah. 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 She'll enjoy that too.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'll be here all week. Try the veal.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, you do some comedy too, don't you?
You know what? Only in my brain. If I did have another hobby, it is that I study stand-up comedy, like hardcore study it. And I think I probably could be good at it if I actually did it.
Yeah.
But I was at the Comedy Store in LA the last few weeks. I went there twice. And the comedy, for people that don't know stand-up very well, a lot of, professional stand-up comics will do their hour, and you'll see it on HBO or Netflix. A lot of people are releasing their stuff on Netflix.
Yep.
And then once that hour is out, they don't have material anymore.
And that's not easy to come up with.
No. Go just for fun. Go try to be funny to one of your friends for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah.
Just be funny for 2 minutes and try to get what do they say, every 7 seconds? So try to get 10 to 14 laughs out of your friend in 2 minutes and see how easy it is to do what they do.
Yeah.
And then they have to build that up into, an hour 20, hour 40 to be a special. And so when when a guy lives in LA or girl lives in LA and they're working on new material, they'll go to comedy club to comedy club to comedy club in one night. And they'll do these little 15-minute sets where they're just working on new material. And they'll come in, they'll try the stuff out. If it doesn't work there, they'll go to another club that night. They'll juxtapose a few words, try it that way and see if it works any better. And they'll just keep doing that and refining and refining and refining.
Wow.
So it goes bits, chunks, and then, you're set. So they'll have a good bit. It'll start with a good premise, and they'll say, like Chris Rock, women can't go down in lifestyle. They can't go down in lifestyle, right? And so he'll then tell 7 jokes about that premise. And once that's done, maybe he'll have another thing that he segues into. That could be a chunk. That could be like a 12-minute chunk of his set.
Right.
But by the time you hear it in the show, on HBO or on Netflix, he's told that 400 times to get it to where you hear it.
Yeah.
And that's what the life of a stand-up is like. So I knowing that and really appreciating the craft of speaking on stage and speaking live, and then seeing these guys do their thing, and then literally walking up, like I met John Mulaney the other day, who's I'm a huge fan of his, and I was a giggling schoolgirl. Like I completely lost how to speak to a human, and I probably could have met
from you, really.
Dude, I could have met any other celebrity and been like, hey, great to meet you. But because it was a stand-up, I was like, yeah, I love your stuff. I was just so dorky. It's true. But, and then tomorrow, I think I'm speaking to Anthony Jeselnik, who actually has the #1 special on Netflix right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm hosting a show. I'm not sure if you know this, but I'm hosting a podcast with a former NFL player named Hines Ward, who played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we've recorded a few shows. Tomorrow we're interviewing Anthony Jeselnik, and he's by far my current favorite comedian. So I'm going to have to figure out how to keep it together on that show, which is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, you'll have to do a little practicing, like take it out into the clubs and do your little circuit.
I've been practicing. Like whenever I've had a big fat guest, I remember when I had like Adam Carolla, and I was really nervous about that. And a good pro on the other end will make you feel comfortable right away. And he did that. He was, they'll just take the reins and they'll go.
Great.
And that's what you want. You don't want to, I just heard John Lee Dumas's interview of Gene Simmons from Kiss.
Yeah.
And man, did Gene make him work hard. Like that was a toughie. Like, and he didn't even need to he gave a little preamble on that particular show, and he said, oh man, this was a tough one. I didn't need that preamble. I just heard the show and I was like, oof, man, that guy is running him through the ringer right now.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And I've had similar, and I had Michael Gerber from the E-Myth Revisited who did the same thing to me. I mean, you see me sitting in my chair right now. I was like on that show, and I'm like, hey, so blah, 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 blah. And within about a minute and a half, I'm like standing up, and I'm like, all right, dude. And I'm like in battle position. And I did the whole show standing because it was like toe to toe the whole time. And
Wow.
you couldn't tell when you listen to the show, you go, oh, that was a good show. But man, was I working hard under that water. My little duck feet were paddling hard.
Okay, I'm going to have to check those out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I'm going to say it. You said not to say it again, but we'll say it again at the end so people can check you out, the solohour.com. And I think Solo Lab would really be useful for a lot of the people starting online courses.
Oh, no, you do
with
say it
us.
at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're supposed to.
Yeah.
Beginning, middle, end. You know, you do the whole bit.
Yeah. No, I've watched the Stephen Colbert show and everything. They pull up the book and right at the end they're like, yeah, make sure you check out the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 On and off.
Yeah.
But typically when they'll bring them on, they'll say, our next guest has just written a brand new book on solopreneurship and building online courses. It's currently number 2 on the bestseller list. You can grab it on Amazon.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Smith.
Right.
Like that's how, and always the last 2 words of any good intro is someone's name.
Only number 2, eh?
Well, once you got on the show, then boom.
Oh,
you're gonna
yes,
be,
right. Yes.
Number 1.
Yeah. I got the
Remember,
Solopreneur Hour
just
bump.
pushing it. Exactly. Well, in this case, the Colbert Report, but yes.
Right. Yeah. Colbert
exactly.
bump. Yes. That's what he calls it.
The
I
Colbert
think.
bump.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's right.
All right. Well, Michael, I really appreciate it. It was awesome talking to you. And again, we can check you out at solohour.com. And I think I'm a fan of the podcast and we'll continue checking it out and listening. And I hope some of our listeners will do that as well.
Thank you, Greg. Me too. And feel free to tweet me at Solo Hour and I'll answer anything I can answer.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Very good.
Thanks a lot, Michael.
Yep.